Come here.
There's
So,
Rudy in New Jersey.
yeah, yeah, Rudy,
Hello, Aiko.
Rudy and Sonia, Aiko.
Ah, yeah, Sonia too.
Okay, so I hope.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so I thought I'd start off. This caught my eye. Measles is returning, uh, not necessarily to this country, but to the whole hemisphere. And it's falling vaccination rates, but not in this country. So I was very surprised by that and very disappointed in the other countries. So there's some data here, um, and the article, it's the Economist article. They say going back to 2016, uh, the immunization efforts in this hemisphere were great. In fact, they used the word spectacular. No other region of the world managed to go for a year without sustained transmission. The World Health Organization's bar. So, but then something went wrong. As we're seeing, the world's going backwards. The Ebola outbreak is, as we speak, is worse than it was before. Um, and beginning in about 2017, the measles started flaring. And it started in autocratic Venezuela. And this is going to be a theme. Autocracies do not do well. And we're thinking our autocracy is not doing well, but we're doing better than other countries. Um, so in Venezuela, there was hyperinflation and brutality. People were fleeing the country. I think over 20% of people left Venezuela. It's an indication. But it wasn't limited to Venezuela. It spread across the border into Brazil and gradually made its way down to the most densely populated state of Sao Paulo, which Aiko and I visited, and it is densely populated. It's also fairly lawless. When we were there, we were riding with some friends at night, and they're coming up to a stoplight, and they run right through the stoplight. And we said, well, you just ran a red light. And they said, well, at night, you just don't stop at an intersection in Sao Paulo. And that was the state of governance at that point. So I guess it's not surprising that measles took off. And it killed hundreds, mostly young children. Over 30,000 were infected. And what shut down this measles outbreak? It was an incidental piece of luck for measles, but misfortune with COVID. So with COVID lockdown, that shut off the measles epidemic that was brewing. Um, so now, after COVID, we're left to look at what's happening now, and this gives you the data, the flare of measles back in 2017, 2018 to 2020, and there it was mostly in Venezuela and Brazil. You can see it color coded. But now, where is it? The red is Mexico. So last year it was pretty bad in Mexico. It's worse this year. And this year, Guatemala has entered the picture as a hot spot for measles. And so uh, these rolling outbreaks at different countries over the last 15 years just shows you that containment and immunization is falling behind. The most vulnerable are babies under 12 months because you don't get your first measles shot in 12 months. Although in some areas now where it's flaring, they're cheating a little bit and starting at 6 months, even though it's much less effective than at 12 months. And so what are you seeing? You're seeing brain damage, blindness, and death. And so it's not just morbidity, but it's mortality. So this is bad. So let's look at the immunization rate. So this dotted line going down is herd immunity. And measles is so transmissible that to get herd immunity, you have to get over 75% of the population immune. I'm sorry, 95% of the population immune. So 90% of the population's vaccinated. It doesn't, you're still vulnerable. You have to get over 95% herd immunity to prevent flares. And the people that are at most risk, the canaries in the coal mine, are Mennonites because they don't get immunizations. So they're fine when the rest of the herd is above 95%. But when the rest of the herd goes below 95, then they can't be the freeloaders anymore. They can't be protected. So we've seen it in this country last year in Texas, and it's been in Mexico, but surprisingly in Canada. So Canada was a real surprise to me. So you can see the red, which shows the current immunization rate, is worse than it was in 2014. So Canada is going backwards, and I'm not sure why that is. They have a single payer system, but it's not spilling over into the rest of the herd. So you have Mexico, though that is the real danger. So you can see how much their measles vaccination rate has dropped. Back here in 2018, they were above herd immunity, 2014, and now they're way below our herd immunity. So, and it's also true for Honduras, Chile, Paraguay, Brazil, Argentina. So go figure. And here's the thing. World Cup is coming to Canada and Mexico and the United States beginning June 11th, and there's some concern that this might have implications for the World Cup attendance, people coming from all over the globe. I guess the real culprit is ever since COVID, healthcare services, public healthcare, has suffered. And what hasn't helped are the populist leaders of Mexico, Argentina, and Brazil, who have cut their public health budgets. And then there is one bright spot, that's Uruguay. They're leading the world in demonstrating, modeling electronic immunization registry, which I remember when we developed that at the county hospital, we thought we were light years ahead, but Uruguay now has it. So Not many countries do on a countrywide basis. Yeah, Bob.
All you need is a comment on a medical matter from the only person who's in this group is not in the medical profession. But I quickly looked it up for Canada. I mean, it's just staggering what's happened in Canada. And apparently it's because there's not a universal mandate and that the provinces, the Canadian provinces, decide on whether measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine for school entry is required or not. And there are far too many exemptions in many of the provinces. That's what I read.
Huh. Well, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Thanks for that.
Question.
Yeah.
Is my measles vaccine given to me 70 years ago still good today?
I, I think so. I think so. Um, I, I don't. I've looked up what needs boosters, and I don't think measles does. But some of my doctor friends here today might correct me if I'm wrong.
It is not for old folks like us.
Okay.
Right, but we've never had a incidents like this where we've had a respiking, and you've got to figure there's got to be some people, particularly with cancer, cancer or immunocompromising conditions, where it might not be a bad idea to get a booster.
Yeah, immunocompromised people. Yeah. Okay. All right. Next topic. While we were traveling, the Economist graphics group, they came up with an interesting project, which was to divide Democrats into four tribes. And, it's a little bit controversial, but I think it's worth a look. The way they cut the data on the x-axis, it was to the extent that members in this sub-tribe believed that white privilege was really a thing, so it gets to the heart of the culture, identity warriors. And does white privilege exist? And so the closer you are to agreeing that exists, you're more likely to be progressive. But then on the y-axis, their measure is the people that are in favor of building a border wall, which is a proxy for immigration. And they mapped out these four groups based on those two parameters, which I thought was ingenious. But then to make it more understandable, they broke it down into two affinity groups. So the progressives, which is the largest group, average age of 45, also the whitest group, also the most educated group, and most pro social spending and taxing the rich. And here you have Bernie and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez as the figureheads. And this is the group that's most likely to think white privilege is a thing. So it might be fun for you to see what group you're the closest to. The establishment Democrats are average age of 58, so a little bit older, but a smaller percent, 29%. And they are part of a many governing coalition. So you have the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer. You have Mark Kelly of Arizona. And they're pro guarding the border, pro police spending, and uh, they're in favor of raising the corporate tax rate. So are you a progressive or are you more establishment? Or are you bootstrap Democrats? And these are more ethnic figureheads, but they're also the most religious and most in favor of safety and police spending. And they're less likely to believe in the concept of white privilege. And they're the lowest support for abortion rights. So that's an interesting constellation of factors. And then finally, at the extreme is the isolationists, a very small percent of Democrats. And they have the highest share of women and blacks and Hispanics. And interestingly, they're against supporting Ukraine in their war with Russia. Bay Area, two figureheads from the Bay Area, Ro Khanna from the peninsula, and Barbara Lee from Oakland. So they're a little bit. You'll remember Barbara Lee was the only member of Congress to vote against invading Afghanistan. So she was a true isolationist. Coincidentally, today in the East Bay Times, this is a headline that basically what she's doing is encouraging Oakland to adapt the strong mayor model. Right now, it's the city council model where power is spread out over different districts. And she is she earned the ire of one of the reporters for the East Bay Times. So I can't think of his name right now, but he used to, every once in a while, the county medical services got, he targeted.
Borenstein.
Yeah, thank you. Dan Borenstein, thank you. So it's an interesting take on Barbara Lee and kind of a sensational headline. I don't think the bulk of the article warrants or matches that headline. Okay, so a couple of postscripts to last week's talk on the history of Spain, some things I wish I'd said. I talked to you about the cave paintings in Altamira and how we tried to visit them, but you can't. They've banished human beings from going into those caves because of CO2. And I found this example of what CO2 has done to the cave paintings. You can see how it's dimmed the colors, and that's because carbon dioxide over time becomes acidic and interacts with the paint, and this is why they've had to wall off the original and build an artificial recreation of the Altamira caves. Also, I just wanted to prove to you that there really are bagpipers in northwestern Spain, in Galicia, Gaelic, Galicia. And this is at Santiago de Compostela. And this is the destination of the Camino walk is this church, where St. James, Santiago, San Diego is James the Apostle. And this is the destination. You finish this walk after 500 miles. You get your picture taken in front of it. And there are plenty of hostels around this square. So spot the ringer. Here's an old geezer in the corner, just to verify that we were there. One of you mentioned that the graphics are pretty nice, and I lifted a lot of it from this presentation on YouTube. So if you want to see it, look for the entire history of Spain. It's not very long, but the graphics are particularly vivid, I thought. So where we stopped last week was the Inquisition. Isabella and Ferdinand didn't start the Inquisition, they supercharged it, but it had actually started back in 1184, about the same time as the Crusades, which had a similarity in spirit. The Spanish Inquisition was launched in 1478 when Isabella and Ferdinand were on the throne. And it lasted all the way up until 1834. So when Spain was in California, the Inquisition was still going on. What kind of winding down, and maybe you'll remember Junipero Serra spent 9 years in Mexico City, and during that time he had tested the sincerity of Indian converts in the name of the Inquisition. Also 1492, big year. That was the fall of Granada. So Granada was the last Islamic holdout. After 700 years, they finally fell. Ferdinand and Isabella were there. Isabella, I mentioned last week, she actually would put on a suit of armor, kind of as a photo op to inspire her troops. Columbus had first presented the idea in 1486, but Ferdinand and Isabella were preoccupied with finishing off Granada, and they put him off, and they said, we're not going to give you a decision quite yet, but you can't leave the country. They confined Columbus to Spain. What they were worried was that he'd go over to Portugal and get Portuguese backing. But he didn't, and the rest is history.
Hey, John, this is Tom. I got a quick question for you.
Sure.
When in your opinion, was Spain like the most powerful, or I'm not sure what the right words, most powerful or most influential in the world? You know, like people talk about, well, the Greek era was from so and so year to so and so year, and the Roman Empire was from so and so year to so and so year. What about Spain?
Well, you're setting me up pretty good for a few slides that'll be coming up, but I'll
Oh, that's okay. Keep going then.
I'll tip my hat and say it was during the era of Charles V. And I'll be talking about him in just a second. So yeah, you had Spain and Portugal testing their discoveries in the rest of the world. And so back in those days, you could turned to the Pope to settle these kind of international disputes.
Yeah.
Something that the UN is supposed to be doing today, but not so well. And the problem with the Pope, he didn't have very good map makers, so he didn't realize that this particular latitude would take in the nose of Brazil. So they had to kind of redraw that line. So and that was claimed by Portugal. And the Portuguese had claimed Africa. And why was that? Because of Henry the Navigator. He had been really the first explorer to come down from Portugal to come down. And it wasn't necessarily he that went on all of the voyages, but he sponsored a lot of them. And so this is Henry. And his first success was rediscovering the Madeira Islands. Apparently, they had been discovered but lost track of. And he said, you know what, let's try planting sugar there. And of course, when you get to Brazil, that's what the Portuguese did in Brazil, particularly northern Brazil, up in Salvador, and African slaves that were brought there. We went to the African Brazilian museum in Salvador, and it was quite something. But yeah, that's where slavery was the strongest in Brazil, in the north. Also discovered the Azores, and he had a brother who became king of Portugal, and he said, "You know what, Henry? We'll give you the royal fifth. So of all trade profits, you'll get a fifth of it, just the same percentage that Isabella and Ferdinand claimed." So at that time, there was a great fear of sailing so far from the shore that you couldn't see it. And they didn't know what was going to happen. And he progressively went down the coast of Africa, or his sponsored people who were able to come back and say, you know, it's not that bad. And so you have a map, different expeditions coming down, and each time they went down a little bit further around each and every corner, they felt more and more confident that it was doable. And then finally, you wind up with Vasco da Gama going all the way to India after Columbus makes his discovery. So maybe Columbus making his discovery gave them the courage to turn more and more corners. And of course, Diaz actually, Vasco da Gama actually makes it to India, where Columbus claimed he made it to. But this was in 1498, so 6 years after Columbus. You could get to India, but not by sailing east, by sailing west, but by sailing east. Okay, so it was Portugal and Spain that shared. So we went to the capital of Portugal, Lisbon, and we were astonished at how much it was like San Francisco. It was a great port. It was hilly as heck. So you can see there's some streets in San Francisco that look a little bit like this. Uh, and you get to the very top on the hilly part, which you get just like Toledo, you get to the top by taking up a series of elevators, escalators, I'm sorry, escalators that get you all the way to this hilltop. And lo and behold, you look across their bay and you see something that's orange that you'd say, hey, they had to have the Golden Gate in mind when they built that bridge. No doubt about it. The other thing is they've got cable cars. This is our son Jeremy, who was our guide in Lisbon and showed us around. So Spain had to share with Portugal. So back to Spain, 1492. We talked a lot about the Jews last week, and I came upon this article. Musing, was Columbus Jewish? I had mentioned last week that the Fidel Castro ancestors were from Galicia. And when we were in Galicia, we kept bumping into Castros. And this was the most prominent. It was a female novelist termed the greatest Galician cultural icon. Spain got Mexico, conquered the Aztecs, and because of a novel, they wanted to head north to California, where this novel talked about the legend of Queen Khalifa, who in the novel controlled an island. They thought Baja California was an island, you may remember. So they aspired to go up there. Cortez himself went up and nosed around Baja California. And Spain claimed all the way to Alaska. When we were up in Alaska cruise 2 years ago, we ran into bays where Spanish explorers had ventured. So it was really interesting. We know that Cabrillo was the first Spaniard to come up from Mexico City and actually land and claim California in 1540. So that was a little 21 years after they landed in Mexico City. But they never settled there until 1769. And of course, Russia did settle up in their center was Sitka, but Sitka was so far from Moscow, and they had outgrown their supply lines, and they couldn't do it. So they sold Alaska to us, and that was one of our great foreign policy coups, initially called Seward's Folly. But this was what Spain claimed, but they didn't settle in California until 1769. So all this time, 231 years, I think, what were they doing that kept them from settling in California? And that's basically what I'm going to talk about. What were they doing in Europe, to answer Tom's question? most conquistadors were Castilian. And why Castilian? Because Castilian had mounted and unified northern Spain and gradually got other parts on board as they rolled back the Muslims. So they kept rolling back the Muslims, rolling back the Muslims. And once they rolled back the Muslims out of Granada, they just kept on going. You know, this conquering is a lot of fun. So they became the conquistadors in the New World. Just one side note. Notice there's no Madrid here. And I'll tell you when Madrid came into existence, but not yet. There's an interesting foundation story for Madrid. So the New World really paid off, particularly mining, the silver and the gold. The most famous mine was Potosi in South America. And what the effect of that? It was mainly bad because it caused eventually inflation in Spain, which became Spain's downfall. But it also caused inflation in China, having all this extra currency. Spain did the circular trade with their galleons, the Manila galleons that would pile on a lot of gold in Acapulco and sail over to Manila, unload the gold, buy Chinese silks, tea, and come back again. So that circular trade. And so a lot of this mining bonanza got to China. So to answer Tom's question, this is Charles V. And he was Charles I of Spain, but he was Charles V in the rest of Europe. And why is that? Just consider the upper half of this family tree. This is Ferdinand and Isabella. And you can't make history up. It's so interesting. They had a daughter named Crazy Juana La Loca, because apparently she had some sort of mental health problem. But it wasn't so bad that she didn't get married. In fact, she married quite well. Philip I, or Philip el Hermosa, Philip the Handsome, and he was a Hapsburg. So all of a sudden, you get a combining of the Spanish Castilians who have had this New World bonanza, very rich, and combined with the Hapsburgs of Austria, the green. And they come together and have a daughter, Juana the Crazy, but Juana has a kid with Philip the Handsome. And I guess Philip the Handsome's genes were dominant because they produced Carlos I of Spain, but Carlos V in terms of the Holy Roman Empire by way of the Hapsburgs. So, Tom, here's your answer. Carlos V. His remit was so large, including the New World and Europe, that he said, I can't do this all by myself. I'm going to give the Habsburg realm, the European Habsburg riches to my brother Ferdinand. And the thing about the Habsburgs is they had married well. So not only did they have Austria, but they had married so well that they had Holland, the Dutch, that they had parts of France, as you'll see in a map in just a second. And Carlos said, you know, Fernando, I'm going to give the Spanish part to my son, but I'm going to give you the title of Holy Roman Emperor. So you're going to do Europe. So this is the European Hapsburg branch. And so you can see this is the Holy Roman Empire. It's made up of over 300 German principalities, but it's also made up of Italy. Being Catholic, somebody's got to protect the Pope and the Vatican. So that's the Holy Roman Empire had that job. But as Pepper and I learned when we traveled to Italy together, they also controlled Naples and controlled the kingdom of two Sicilies, which really was Naples and Sicily. So just look at how large this territory, and I think this was peak power, quite specifically for Tom, between the 1520s and 1550s.
Interesting. Are you gonna tell us what happened after he passed away?
Yes, I am.
Oh, thank you.
His son, Philip II, is a hell of a story. This is what Charles is quoted as saying: Austria, let other people wage war. You just marry well. And that's what the Habsburgs did. They married well and got Holland, the Holy Roman Empire, even sections of France, Italy, and obviously also Spain. He chose to split between his son Philip II, who ruled over Spain, the Netherlands, Italy, and the New World, and his brother, who took on the Holy Roman Empire. So this is his brother, Fernando, who ruled in the name of Charles V. And this is what the Holy Roman Empire looked like, over 300 principalities. What a mess. But it functioned as a loose alliance. They could be counted on all the way up until Bismarck. This is your first look at his son, Philip II, sitting with Uncle Ferdinand. Yeah, Bob.
What was the language, the lingua franca of the Holy Roman Empire?
I think Latin. I think Latin. Yeah. So Philip II. Now he's going to be the main player for the rest of our time today, and he does quite a bit. Ferdinand, he just ruled in his older brother's name, juggling all the German princes, but he was outright king of Bohemia, Czechoslovakia, as we know it, Hungary, Croatia, and he was the Archduke of Austria, which meant he was next in line to take over the Austrian throne. Now let's look at Philippi. You know more about Philippi than you think you do. So here's Philippi. He is the son of Carlos the grandson of Crazy Juana, and the great grandson of Ferdinand and Isabella. So keep track of these players. The thing that's going to get interesting for us, we all know Henry VIII, right? Well, he married Crazy Juana's younger sister, Catherine of Aragon. So this is why you know about Philip II. He married the daughter of Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon, Bloody Mary. So a little bit more about that. Here is the royal family itself, so we can something we can get our hands around. Here's Henry VIII. Now, his first wife was Juana de Crazy's younger sister, Catherine of Aragon, and they had a kid, much to Henry VIII's chagrin. That kid was a woman, Mary, who had become Bloody Mary. Now, who is this standing next to Bloody Mary? Her husband, Philip II. Philip II. She's going to marry him, and I'm going to tell you how that happens. But just to finish this tableau here, Henry finally had a son with his third wife, Edward III. So he finally got his son. But he had one more kid before he got his son. Anne Boleyn gave him a daughter, Elizabeth II. So all this, what a hell of a family this is. Now there are two ringers in the picture here. It's pure Tudor propaganda. Whoever commissioned this painting said, "Why don't you put in peace and plenty?" So this is peace and that's plenty, because the Tudors are going to give us both. Edward, when Henry dies, the first son, Edward VI, takes the throne. And like father, like son, Edward VI is Protestant, big time Protestant. And Henry was the first, right? And he's the one that took away all the church land and throughout the Catholics. So Edward VI doubles down on what his dad did, and he was very Protestant. His mother, Jane Seymour, had died right after giving birth to him. And Edward himself died 6 years after ascending the throne, and probably of measles, which we talked about earlier, and tuberculosis in combination. Yeah, Bob.
Edward VI founded a lot of grammar schools around England, including King Edward VI School, Birmingham, which I attended.
Excellent. Excellent. So many connections with history. It's just so much fun. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So Edward VI, he knows he's going to die because it's respiratory, and every day it's harder and harder to breathe. And he says, lurking in the background is my half sister, Mary, from Catherine of Aragon. And if I die, she probably is going to claim the throne, and the Catholics will be back, and that'll be a disaster. Uh-oh. So he says, you know what I'm going to do? I got a cousin, Lady Jane Grey, I want to marry her. I was planning to marry her, but here I am. I'm going to die, but I'm going to write a new act of succession that puts her in front of Mary. Now, this was highly problematic and frankly illegal, but Edward gives it the try, and Lady Jane Grey is briefly on the throne. Mary realizes, oh my God, they're going to come for me next. And she hightails it to East Anglia, I think it was, and mounts a Catholic response because she thinks, and the Catholics all across Europe and Scotland are thinking, hey, Bloody Mary's. They didn't call her Bloody Mary then. I'll tell you why they call her Bloody Mary in a second. But Mary is getting the shaft, and surprisingly, she is able to mount resistance to Lady Jane Grey. So she comes back from East Anglia and mobilizes a counter coup, which, in spite of the name Bloody Mary, is rather bloodless. Even though London is leaning towards the Protestants, Mary prevails because the English nobility follow the law, and the public knew enough of the legal system to understand that Mary was the rightful heir, even though she was a Catholic. And now Mary's on the throne, and enter Spain in the person of Philip II. So after Mary gains the throne, then Philip recognizes her as being pretty eligible woman, and they marry. Why is she called Bloody Mary after this bloodless coup? Because she executes Lady Jane Grey to make sure that there's no more Protestant uprising, at least not while she's on the throne, which is only 5 years, because if tuberculosis and measles interrupted the flow of things, another medical entity takes her off the throne, and that's probable ovarian cancer. I say that because she has something growing in her abdomen that she thinks is a baby, but it turns out it kills her, and it was probably ovarian cancer, although that's hotly debated. So there you are. And now
Wow.
Elizabeth takes over because she's next in line. And if you give it to one half sister, you got to give it to the other half sister. And so the Protestants, because of medical problems, are back in business. So Elizabeth takes over, and guess who she starts fighting with? Philip II, because he was expecting to add England to all the places where he had influence. So what does he do? He puts together an armada, and we know how that ends, and that's probably a good place to stop today and start next week. And I'll throw it open for discussion.
John, this is Tom. Thanks a lot for that history class. But I guess back in those days, these things took time because, I mean, they didn't have telephones and the telegraph and all that sort of stuff, right?
Right. Yeah, a lot of lag, a lot of lag period. You
I mean,
know,
I could only imagine it took months or half a year or something like that. I mean, is that sort of correct or what?
well, I'll tell you what took longer was, and this is a series that I'll recommend that Bill Walker recommended, which is The Men Who Built America. And it's profiles, I guess, of around a dozen people, but one of them is Andrew Jackson. And the Battle of New Orleans, which he was celebrated for and was a launching pad for him to become president, was fought after the war between America and England, the War of 1812, was settled. It was fought a few months after. So that lag period was even worse when you were dealing with an ocean that separated the parties. At least, you know, you can get from Spain across the English Channel much quicker. So yes, there was a lag period then, but even greater in our own history when it came to dealing with parties that were in Europe.
John, when I was 14, we moved to England. This is Pepper. And I did school in London, in Southwest London. And one of the things I realized, of course, is that, history there is different. But comes a poem out of that, which was that we had to memorize the kings of England. So it's Willie Willie, Harry Steve, Harry Dick, Harry 3, 1, 2, 3 Neds, Richard 2, Henry 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Anyway, it's just, it's there's a longer history of other cultures. So I just throw that in for fun.
That's a pearl. That's a pearl. Okay.
Any way to memorize it.
Yeah, Bruce.
Yeah, well, one of the things that my wife and I are reading Young Man in a Hurry by Gavin Newsom. I don't know if you've read that at all, but that's a very interesting book, and particularly how it relates to the Gettys and versus Newsom, and how his mother was very poor in a sense, whereas he was hanging out with the Gettys, who were very rich, and so it's a very interesting kind of, you wonder about how all these people work together and talk about, well, there's just like David's saying here with learning all of the kings and queens, it's amazing how that well, I'm just so naive about what that history and what the rich people have been doing for years and years and years, and how the high society and how this is Trump is not making it up. I mean, it's
Yeah. Well, this is the thing about history, the connections.
yeah, it's
There's so many interesting connections. In fact, I don't know if you all remember, there was an English guy, Burke, David Burke, and his thing, it was called Connections. And he'd start off, and you wouldn't think two things are connected, but they are, and how. And his shows with those themes made that come alive, that phenomenon that you noticed. Yeah. Okay, folks.
Hey, John, one more question.
Yeah.
I think I know the answer, but I really don't know the answer. So back in those days, like the period we're talking about, uh, uh, was like marriage between blood relatives, was that forbidden, or what's the story with that?
No, and next week you will see that was the Habsburg downfall. So many consanguineous marriages that it finally caught up with them. Jim, right on cue, has found the James Burke connection. So there it is. So you can run down on YouTube, I'm sure, the old installments of that. So thanks,
So,
Jim.
so was it? So I mean, cousins could marry cousins. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah, it was actually
Absolutely.
preferable. It was actually preferable in some cases to solidify alliances.
And but from a medical point of view, if they had children, was there
Oh,
could be problems with the offspring?
oh yeah.
Well, there was, and
Yes.
you'll see the Habsburgs. That was their.
Isn't
It's going to be their downfall. But guess what? More recently and closer to English history is Victoria. I've got some old slides on how hemophilia, how Queen Victoria was the alpha case for hemophilia in royal families. The most influential and consequential was in Russia, of course. And one of Queen Victoria's daughters, I think that's right, married into the Russian royal family and introduced hemophilia into Tsar Alexander II's son.
I'm not a doctor or medical field. What's hemophilia?
The bleeding,
blood.
inability to clot, and nobody had a cure except this guy named Rasputin, who claimed to have a cure. And he was a holy man, a shyster, a fraud, and totally bewitched Queen Victoria's daughter and had influence in the Russian court that made them more vulnerable to revolutionaries. So there's a case of bad result of intermarriage.
So I mean, if in the old days you cut yourself and you wrapped a bunch of cloth or whatever they had back in those days around it, it still wouldn't stop the bleeding?
Well, yeah, and we used to have more problems. I think when some of us doctors were young, we remember having to treat cases in the emergency room with clotting factors. And there, there's a whole cascade of clotting factors. But yeah,
It's the
that.
skin, bleeding in the organs and bleeding in the joints and bleeding in the brain, places you can't put a bandage on.
Oh, I see. I see. I got you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, folks. So I'll see you next week.
All right.
Thanks a lot, John.
All right.
Mhm.